The new iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Pro are here, and with 4 models still at very, very close price points, with $100 separating the iPhone 16 Plus and the iPhone 16 Pro, and now with both phones being updated with a new capture button, new A18 chips, and both phones getting a 48 megapixel camera system, your decision on what phone you should buy may be more confusing than it should be. Thankfully, you stumbled on this video, and I'm gonna walk you through not only what iPhone 16 you should buy, but all the differences between these models and also mistakes that you should avoid to ensure you get the best iPhone model, because there's a lot Apple did not tell you. Now, this video has no sponsor, but I just wanted to quickly plug my 2 existing wallpaper packs that are going to look great on any iPhone. Check them out in the description below, and I know not everyone can buy them, but if you do, I really appreciate it. Thank you for all your support, and hey, if you can't buy one, please just consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate all the support from everyone watching this. If I could jump out of the screen and give you a big hug myself, I would. Okay, maybe you wouldn't want a hug. How about a nice firm handshake? I think we can all agree on that. Now, the first thing you can't be fooled by when you go to buy a new iPhone 16 is the battery life. Yes, after years of marketing the Plus model as having the best battery life out of any iPhone, well, this year Apple completely switched it up, and that is no longer the case. Battery life is now the longest on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and it gets a ridiculous improvement to its battery life, with Apple saying that you could see a 4-hour improvement over the previous 15 Pro Max. In fact, both Pro models now have much better battery life than the normal iPhone 16 models. So if you care about having the best battery life possible, it is well worth looking into the Pro models. Speaking of big differences this year, this is also the first year where the sizes between the normal iPhone models and the Pro iPhone models are now different. That's because the iPhone 16 Pro was updated from a 6.1 inch display to a 6.3 inch display, and the iPhone 16 Pro Max was updated from a 6.7 inch display to a 6.9 inch display. Meanwhile, the regular iPhone 16 and 16 Plus stay at the same exact display sizes from last year. Now, Apple claims they did this by shrinking the bezels around the phone, but what they left out is that they also made the physical dimensions of the Pro phones even bigger. In fact, these are the biggest iPhones yet in terms of physical size. So if you are someone who thinks that iPhone models are getting too big and you prefer smaller iPhone size models, well, you're seeing some really big increases in both the height and width on the Pro models, and they may be a little more difficult to fit into your pocket this year. Another thing you need to know is that there's some good and bad news about these iPhone displays. The good news is that in terms of the visual fidelity of these displays, they are exactly the same on the iPhone 16 and the 16 Pro. Both have the same pixel density, the same contrast ratio, and both have the same 2000 nits of full screen brightness, and both can now even get to a super dim 1 nit of minimum brightness, which is going to be great when you're in bed at 2 a.m. and you open up your phone. Hopefully, we're not blinding our eyes. Apple cares about all sorts of health. Maybe they care about eye health too. Now, despite both displays having a lot of similar specs, the normal iPhone 16 and 16 Plus still have a standard 60Hz display, while the 16 Pro and Pro Max both get a 120Hz ProMotion display, which makes everything from scrolling to gameplay with higher frame rates look smoother and more fluid. The Pros are also the only iPhones that have an always-on display, which can be helpful for a lot of the new iOS features like live activities or standby mode. Another thing to be thankful for this year is that a lot of the design features are similar on both iPhone 16 models. Both the normal and Pro models now get the action button that you can map quick shortcuts to, like launching the flashlight or voice memos or setting it to the good old mute functionality. And every iPhone also gets a new camera control button where you can press it to open the camera app, then you can press it again to take a photo or video, and you can even slide your finger along this camera button to control things like zoom or exposure and navigate to different camera controls. It is really a cool looking feature, and I'm super stoked that it is on both models. And like last year, both phones come with USB-C, but things aren't always as they appear. 2 steps ahead. I am always 2 steps ahead of you, Apple, and your tricks. Yes, even though both phones come with a USB-C port, the iPhone 16 has a slower USB-C port running at USB 2.0 speeds at 40 megabits per second, while the iPhone 16 Pro gets a 10 gigabit per second USB 3 port. That is a huge advancement in speed. That means that transferring things like photos, videos, files, or really any sort of data will be a lot faster on the iPhone 16 Pro. Another thing that Apple thankfully changed this year is, unlike the past few years of iPhone updates, for the first time in a while, the iPhone 16 is being updated with a new chip. And this A18 chip might not be as weak as you would believe, considering the iPhone 16 Pro comes with an A18 Pro chip. In fact, it looks almost entirely the same in terms of CPU and neural engine performance as the A18 Pro chip in the 16 Pro, and both phones even come with the same 8 gigabytes of RAM. That is a huge upgrade for the normal iPhone models, which usually came with less memory than their Pro counterparts. So both of these phones should run really smoothly and be able to have a lot of apps open in the background. Now, there is one notable difference with the A18 Pro over the A18 chip, and that is that the A18 chip has one less GPU core, which makes me think that really the A18 and A18 Pro are the same chip, and that the A18 literally is just a binned version of the A18 Pro, and it's missing one GPU core. I am so sorry that you had to hear A18 so many times in that thing. No, there shouldn't be a counter. There's a counter, isn't there? Frick. Who edited this? It was me. And unlike last year, the iPhone 16 is also capable of now playing those AAA level game titles. Now, I'm not saying you won't see some slight performance advantages on the A18 Pro with GPU tasks and high-level gaming, but I think for most users, these chips will perform very similarly, and that's just good news if you're an iPhone 16 buyer. Especially now that both phones will gain access to all of the new Apple Intelligence features, which Apple really highlighted at this event. Like, they really wanted you to know that these iPhones are capable of running AI features, and that is a huge improvement over last year's phones, because the normal iPhone 15 can't even run Apple Intelligence. However, one thing you just can't be fooled by is, even if these Apple Intelligence features look really compelling to you, you need to know that these features will not be ready on the launch date of September 20th when these new iPhones are released. And that might shock you, given how much Apple advertised these AI features like generative images or Genmoji, the writing tools, the smarter Siri, and so on. They advertised so many of these AI features as being standard on these iPhone 16s at their event, and they're not even shipping on the release software. Apple said that these features are coming sometime in the fall, and the only real hint of a release date we got is that they said some of these AI features will be available in a beta later next month. So listen, if you're someone who is planning to upgrade to these new iPhones to use these new Apple Intelligence features, like I actually know some friends who are excited to get Apple Intelligence, well, right now there's literally no rush. You can wait for these updates to actually be available, and I don't think you have to rush out and pre-order if you were someone that was just interested in Apple Intelligence. Like, wait for them to actually release it before you buy it. All right, finally, let's address the big decision maker between these phones, the camera. That's what everyone cares about, right? So at first glance, it appears we are getting a very similar camera system with both the regular and the Pro models. They both have a 48 megapixel main sensor. However, there is quite a few big differences between both of these camera systems. First of all, the iPhone 16 Pro has a second generation 48 megapixel sensor. Apple says that this sensor has zero shutter lag when using the full 48 megapixel sensor when shooting in HEIF Max or PRORAW formats. Secondly, even though the iPhone 16 got an upgraded ultrawide angle camera that now has autofocus and now has the same macro photography mode as the Pro models, once again, the Pro model outshines the normal model because it gets a new 48 megapixel sensor for that ultra wide angle camera that can capture even higher resolution photos on that lens, while the normal 16 still has a 12 megapixel sensor. Another big difference, like every year, is that the normal iPhone 16 does not have a dedicated zoom lens and only has a software 2x zoom. The iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max now both have a 5x telephoto lens, which can zoom in much further than the software 2x zoom, and it takes much more detailed shots than the normal 16 at a farther distance. And like I mentioned before, do not forget PRORAW and PRORES video are software locked to the 16 Pro, even though the 16 should technically be able to do it, right? It has an A18 chip. Like, these are just not options on the normal iPhone 16. Now, if you need ProRAW or PRORES, I feel like you should know if you do, but basically these file formats give you much greater control and flexibility when editing photos and videos. The iPhone 16 Pro also gains a new video feature, now being able to shoot at up to 4K at 120 frames per second for super sharp slow motion footage. The 16 Pro also gets better microphones than the regular 16. It now has studio quality microphones, and honestly, this is one of the things I am looking forward to the most on the 16 Pro. I hope these sound really, really good. So if you value professional level photo and video features like this, I mean, the iPhone 16 Pro truly lives up to its Pro name. Pricing remains the same on the iPhone 16 Pro, starting at $999 for 128 gigabytes of storage, while the Pro Max does not have a 128 gigabyte option and instead starts at 256 gigabytes for $1,200, while the normal 16 starts at $799 for 128 gigabytes, and then the Plus is $100 more at $899 for the same 128 gigabytes. As for what phone you should order, well, like always, it depends. I really think Apple has a good distinction this year between the normal and Pro phones. The regular phones are great for people that want to start using Apple Intelligence. They want to get a phone with very similar performance to that of the Pro, and honestly, a lot of the same features as well. There's really two main differences where you should lean normal or Pro. The big main difference for me is sizing options. So if you want a bigger phone, go for the Pro, or conversely, if you want a smaller model, go for the regular 16. Secondly, like every year, it's the camera system. If you really care about having the best camera, and especially if you plan to edit your photos and videos after the fact, there's no denying that the iPhone 16 Pro's camera system just offers a lot more features and flexibility that make it worth it to anyone looking for the ultimate iPhone camera. And I think that's probably going to be the biggest deciding factor for most users. Now, I don't think there's necessarily a wrong iPhone 16 model to buy, but the one iPhone that still seems really hard to recommend is the Plus model. It's still awkwardly priced at $899, meaning it's only $100 away from the iPhone 16 Pro. And it doesn't have as large of a display advantage this year. Sure, it has a 6.7-inch display, but the Pro now has a 6.3-inch display, so it's less of a difference. And now the Plus model doesn't even have the best battery life title. That now belongs to the iPhone 16 Pro Max model. So yeah, this year the Plus really doesn't seem to have that much going for it. And if you're gonna drop $899 on a Plus, honestly, I would just step up to the 16 Pro for $100 more and deal with a slightly smaller display. Now, I should also mention, like every year, the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro aren't the only iPhones in the lineup, and Apple has kept the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 14 in the lineup this year at lower price points, dropping them by $100. And while you may look at those phones and think they look like good deals based on their lower pricing, especially because the 15 and 16 do look very similar, my last bit of advice is please do not buy these cheaper models. Don't do it. I know they look attractive and I get it. We're all trying to save a little bit of money, and yeah, most people don't need the latest iPhones, and those old iPhones are probably still good, but I do really worry about people getting those phones when so many of the new iOS 18 features are based on Apple Intelligence. And you need a new iPhone 16 to get those Apple Intelligence features if you don't own an iPhone 15 Pro. They will not work even on last year's normal iPhone 15 model. And that's just taking into account this year of updates. If AI is truly as important as everyone says it is, well, if you're buying a phone that's literally stuck in the past, I imagine you'll be missing out on a lot of free future software features because iOS 19 and iOS 20 and so on, will probably gain even more Apple Intelligence features that will not run on these older iPhone models. So yeah, even though $100 or $200 savings might seem like the best practical choice, this is one of those rare years where I am saying, please completely avoid those older iPhone models. I really think they just aren't worth it. To me, the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16 Pro are no-brainer buys over older models this year. Just remember that, yeah, technically you won't get access to those Apple Intelligence features right away, but eventually I think they will be well worth it. As for me, I'm still not sure if I'm going with the smaller iPhone 16 Pro model or the Max model. Let me know in the comments below, what model do you think that I should pick up, and what model are you planning on buying? I really hope you found this video helpful and informative, and I hope it helped you make your purchasing decision. And if it did, please leave me a like, subscribe for the full review coming soon, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.